Well, with the art for the most part, it was fine. I wasn't like huge on it, but one thing I couldn't stand was Susan. I swear she doesn't have eyebrows in any of her things, and it was throwing me off so bad. I could not. Uh, Hello.
It's like ASMR. Turns out this is a very different podcast.
No, what's up, guys? This is JP,
I'm T.
I'm Dallas.
and this is us with DTR Comics. It's good to be back. Today, we've got special comic for you. We've been reading this series called The Secret Wars. Dallas, do you want to give us a little bit more background info on that?
Yeah, so very on brand for me. It was my time to pick, and I was like, all right, I'm going to pick something that you have to know everything about Marvel ever to read and enjoy. And JP and T were like, yeah, sure, great.
I just want to add here in our last podcast, if you go and watch it, there are like 2 or 3 times when we're like, what's something about the Marvel universe? And JP and I both turned to Dallas, and I captioned it as like turning to Dallas for wisdom, which is basically how this entire episode is going to be.
Yeah, I do this because I like to feel powerful, you know? There are plenty of comics under the sun, but I'm like, what's the one that they're going to enjoy the least so I can talk the most on the podcast? And that's really what informed my decision in picking Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars, which is a Jonathan Hickman book, which comes with its own baggage of him creating his whole world, but it also serves as the finale to, at that point, the Marvel Universe. So from 1963, I'm pretty sure, to 2015, and it really made sure that you knew that you had to be there for the whole ride. I think you guys really enjoyed that ride, right? I don't need to hear from you about it. Welcome to the Dallas Taylor Reads Comics podcast. That's what DTR stands for. I don't have co-hosts anymore. What did you guys think of Secret Wars?
So it started out brutally confusing. Like, it drops you into so much. It's like it shows like parallel universes, and it's like Earth 1641, and I'm like, okay, it's 1610, and I'm like, there's way too much technology for it to be 1610 the year, so I don't know what's going on there. But then it's like different Earth 816 or something, 616. Dallas knows. And it's just showing that there are like these 2 different universes, and they're fighting, and like General Fury in one of them's like, okay, we're about to go murk all those people in the other universe so that we don't die, which turns out is a lie. And it just has so many characters and so much going on, you know, like 35% of them. And like, I read comics, and there's so many people I don't know, and it's really hard to keep up with. What was your first impression, JP?
I'm just so grateful that they have like a cast at the beginning of each issue. Like, see here, it's got like,
I didn't see that at all.
oh, you didn't see it? Well, that's really useful. It has like all the different characters that are going to be relevant and their names and what universe they're in. So you've got like the Earth 616, you've got all the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, Guardians of the Galaxy, Inhumans. And you're right, like most of these guys, like I may have heard maybe half of them, and then like a lot of them like, who's that? And then Earth 1610 Ultimate Universe, you've got some heroes from there, Iron Man, Superman, sorry, not Superman, that's from a different universe, all together, Spider-Man, and then like Thanos and his Goonies, the Cabal. And so, I don't know, I thought that was really helpful for me kind of getting situated.
Just reminds me of Game of Thrones, where you like open the book and the back like 30 pages are dedicated to every house and every member of the house, so you can keep it straight. And it's like, wow, a comic book needed to do that, but I missed that, so I was just confused.
Yeah, so this story comes off of the tail end of Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers run, where basically he introduced the idea that the Marvel multiverse was collapsing in on itself. And it was honestly a huge PR stunt to get Miles Morales into the regular Marvel Universe and to kill the Ultimate Universe. Because Jeff Loeb, like 5 years before, was like, hey, Ultimate Universe, time for some weirdo shit. And everybody was like, we didn't like that. And he's like, so you want me to lean further into it? And we're like, no. And he's like, what if Blob ate Wasp? And we're like, why? He's like, what if it was really graphic? Why is this happening? Look, she's torn apart in his mouth. And you're like, ah! And then they were like, Marvel was like, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe we shouldn't have leaned so deep into that. He's kind of a weird guy. Oh, hey, Brian Michael Bendis, are you still writing Miles Morales over there? And he's like, yep, still writing Miles Morales. They're like, that's a good thing. That is beautiful right there. And so they were like, hey, Jonathan Hickman, you write the most complicated storylines of all time. And he's like, oh, who, me? He peeks up, and there's like 16 whiteboards behind him with a bunch of red string going everywhere. They're like, we want you to concisely combine the Marvel universes.
Fix this.
They said, you see this? We got a whole bunch of string, too. We want you to make it one string. And he's like, all right, in order to do that, I need to triple the string. He's like, and then I'll braid it all together into one beautiful rope. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. And he's like, all right, so the universes start colliding into each other, and Iron Man and Reed Richards are like, all right, we got to kill the other universe so ours doesn't blow up every time this happens. And Captain America's like, what? And they're like, shh, forget me now. And they basically roofie the guy and send him on his way, pat him on the butt and send him to go do some American justice. And they're like, we'll get Namor. Namor's like, look at me and my little Speedo. Namor is my heartthrob, actually. And so then they just blow up all the universes until they get here to the end, and they can't blow up the Ultimate Universe.
So is that like the old stories, them just going and wiping out other universes?
Basically, yeah. So the Avengers are like, oh, truth, justice, and the American way. And then there's this group called the Illuminati that's all the smart superheroes. And they're like, yeah, keep doing your boring crap. Keep saving the Earth. We're going to save the universe by blowing up other universes. And so that's the moral quandary that comes into this. And then obviously when they get to the Miles Morales universe with all those other beloved characters that none of us care about, like the Maker, who, he survives this, but...
He does?
Yeah, he does. He's in Venom comics right now. Pretty cool guy. Yeah, it's a weird place. It didn't get any simpler after this. As much as they wanted it to, the rope immediately unraveled.
Just like in the grand scheme of like comic book people that you think should have died, but like it was unambiguous, or it was ambiguous enough, so it's like, okay, I guess they lived. He seemed very dead by the time this was over, but I guess we'll get to that.
And so yeah, Secret Wars is the finale of that big run where they were killing all the planets, all the universes, and they are unable to destroy the Ultimate Universe, and so everything collapses. Dr. Doom jaunts on in with Molecule Man, and he's been doing his own bullcrap in the background, and he's like, I'm God now. And everybody's like, what? And he's like, yep. Snaps his fingers, makes a new universe in his own image, and that's where the story picks up.
Which, it was interesting, especially because they did a good job of just being like, why is Dr. Doom God? Why is the Earth still here? Why did some people make it? Why is Stephen Strange teamed up with Dr. Doom?
That threw me for
that surprised me. Do you want to talk about that, JP?
Yeah, so remember how I said you've got all the characters at the beginning, like a cast sheet, and it has basically kind of split up like good guys and bad guys. I'm like, what the flip is Doctor Strange doing with Dr. Doom? As far as I know, Dr. Doom's a bad guy, and as far as I know, Doctor Strange is a good guy. What are they doing together? So I was so confused. Anyways, so Doctor Doom, he becomes the god of this world, but he also does it with Doctor Strange, which I'm still to this day confused about, like, why or how they two kind of got together.
I think I know how this one works.
Okay.
Send it.
Okay, so everybody's watching these universes die and collapse and fight, and they're kind of like, oh, this isn't going to end well. And so Doctor Doom and Molecule Man start working together to basically find and get rid of the gods that are behind this whole thing. And then they have Stephen Strange help them right at the end. Like, he showed up later. And what they do is they go and find the Beyonders, who are God, who are doing this whole thing and pretty much want to blow up all the universes just for kicks and giggles because they're not great. I don't quite understand why. I guess that's just what you do when you have created everything. You're like, now I got to blow it all up like it's some elaborate sandcastle. But then your sandcastle people come to murder you, And they do manage it with Molecule Man because he is incredibly powerful and just can like do restructure everything at will. So
Yeah, I mean, basically the premise of Doctor Doom's storyline was that Molecule Man was so powerful that the Beyonders were like, we're going to take a little bit of you and put you in every universe. Doctor Doom's like, what if we put together all them bits? Little bits. What'll happen? And they do it. And then Doctor Doom says, I got the power! And then he kills God, and then he becomes God.
yeah, and it's like the three of them are there, Molecule Man, Stephen Strange, and Doctor Doom, and they basically get to take on the mantle just of omnipotence, and Stephen Strange is like, I don't want to, I can't do it. And Doctor Doom is like, well, I do. And so he...
I'll do it.
So Doctor Doom volunteers to become the most powerful person in existence and basically rule everything. But then Molecule Man and Stephen Strange still have like a lot of power kind of left over from that. And they're the few that actually remember everything but previous to the universes colliding. So see, this is what we're talking about. Convoluted story, but it's bringing things together. We're now down to one location, one planet. It's a big location, and only 3 people that remember what it was like.
Ooh, I want to find that. I think they had a map of it, didn't they? Of Battleworld, the world that he created.
Actually, while you look for that, I think this is going to bring us to our topic for today, is how do you make comics that have massive stakes, but a lot of expectations that nothing can change, which is basically what this had to do. Is it had to take just this big old mess that people were becoming unhappy with and turn it into a very neatly packaged, nice thing that people were happy with. And it did it really stinking well. And I think that's going to be our main topic, but Dallas wants to talk about like the Fantastic Four as a family, which is also nice.
We'll get to that. There's just this thing with Marvel Comics. DC hasn't had to do it as much because, let's be honest, DC movies haven't been as successful as Marvel movies. And that's really what it boils down at this point, is up until about 2008, comics could kind of do whatever they wanted because comics people were reading comic books. And then when those movies started coming out, they had to be like, oh man, we have to make this accessible for everybody that wants to jump on at any given moment. We have to make it so you can hop on and kind of get it along the way. And lucky me, I hopped in right before this trend set in. So I was just like, who's that? What's this? This place is really neat. What's that? Who's this? I have no idea. And I'm just running around like a chicken with my head cut off. But so Marvel has gotten in this loop of letting things play out for about 2 years. The next major movie comes out. And then there's a big dynamic change that starts out a new jumping on point for everybody. Some of that included like Jane Foster becoming Thor, Iron Man becoming a bad guy for a little while. Secret Wars ended up starting a whole new stint of things where Falcon was Captain America, Laura Kinney was Wolverine, and it started a bunch of really cool, fun new stories in all honesty. But they basically have to do this juggling act where they need the story to seem like it's progressing, so people like us that have been reading for a little while still feel like we're getting what we want to out of this serialized story format, but anybody can hop on and feel like they can jump on and just start there without having to go back and read 70 years worth of comics. And it's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I feel like Jonathan Hickman did a good job of making it work this time.
Yeah. Okay, JP, you got a map. Do you want to show it to people and tell us what you're thinking?
I don't know how much you can see of this, but like it's got all these different little continents or whatever from the different worlds, and just the fact that they piece all of that together and kind of give them, some of them have new names kind of relating to Doctor Doom, like Doomsguard. I don't know, it was kind of crazy to see how it all fit together, but all these different worlds coming into one from Doctor Doom.
I also think it's funny how, like, when you think of our regular planet, it's like we got a lot of diverse continents that are shaped really different, and this one's like it's pretty much just one well, I guess there's a second one on the north. It kind of looks like somebody kind of put that together as the universes were colliding, so it's kind of funny.
I think one thing that was really fun, so I got to read this when it was coming out in 2015, and something that was really crazy that I haven't seen them do since. I haven't seen them do before. They stopped the whole Marvel line for this. They said everything's over, and then there was Secret Wars, and then all of their new series were based out of one of those countries. So there was like, can I see it? So I mean, there was a comic for Greenland is Hulk World. That's where all the Hulks they get to live up on the northern continent. So there was 6 issues that was just exploring what it's like for all the Hulks to live together in Hulkland. There was like 4 or 5 different X-Men timelines that just, this is now this series. Basically, it was like, what if Civil War never ended? That's one country here. And so you pick up like 30 years into the Civil War, like superheroes there's been like a bloodbath, and like, it's like, what if all these events, what if all these big storylines never ended and they just got to continue running forever? That's what each of these little continents explore. And so for about 8 months in the comics, that's all the Marvel Universe was. There was no continuing storyline other than just like these little blips going on in Battle World.
Did that upset people?
I mean, there was an understanding that it was going to end, you know? And so everyone was like, oh, what a fun diversion. But it was really sad to see some really great stories left on the cutting room floor, if that makes sense. They were like, all right, we're going to clean it all up. And a lot of like the indie darlings died. A lot of them were like, you're gone forever. And then for Battle World, and then, I mean, Spider-Man's going to come back when Battle World's over. You know, the Avengers are going to come back. But like Great Lakes Avengers that everyone loved, there's no way that's coming back. West Coast Avengers, no way that's coming back. Squirrel Girl survived by the skin of her teeth, you know? And those are comics that people really loved.
Those were all things that happened during this event.
Those were all things that were going on immediately before this event that this event killed.
Oh.
So a lot of the little tiny books that had like cult followings died with this. And they were replaced by a lot of pretty great little miniseries. But then once this was all over and we had that nice, clean, singular line, those stories didn't get to come back until relatively recently. They've been doing more and more stories like that again.
Well, that's really interesting. And so this is a complicated story, as you can imagine. And on the actual review portion, it didn't bother me as much as I thought it did. Yes, the first issue was a mess. It was a mess, but it was supposed to be a mess. There were 2 universes colliding, and they were fighting each other, and so like your teammates were fighting themselves, and so there was like no good way for it to end, and so I forgave it. But then it created this really solid, self-contained story that was actually interesting to read, even though I wasn't as familiar with all the things that led up to it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I was completely confused at first. I was still confused throughout it, I think, a bit. Because, like, I was still getting a lot of, like, bad guys working with good guys. And if you're only listening to this, I was doing quote fingers there. I was like, confused, like, Namor working with Black Panther. And I was like, what's going on? Who's who? Like, I was confused about like who Doctor Strange was like at the beginning. Like, is this the Doctor Strange I think I know? Anyways, but it does clear up a bit, and I think that helps because the first bit was just confusing as all get out. And then I think what helps out is that it does become more of that Fantastic Four story that you're talking about. It centers a lot over Doctor Doom and Reed Richards, yeah. And kind of he's the antithesis for him. Rivalry relationship. There we go. Yeah.
Did you look up characters as you went?
I did a bit at first, but then there was so much of it that I kind of gave up.
See, like, I just had a second tab open where I was just be like, okay, Google Maximus or Google Baron Dreadful. Is that his name? Baron Dreadful? I can't remember. Baron Sinister. Oh, look. I said Google, and then Google actually Googled Maximus or Google Baron Dreadful. Anyways, that's kind of funny. So I would just look those things up. It was difficult, though, because you get to like a Wikipedia page, and it has like the whole history of this character over 70 years. I'm like, yeah, okay, I've got a sense of it. I'm going back and just moving on. And it's bothered me surprisingly little. So, no, that was okay.
Well, I think what's really fun about this is Jonathan Hickman does a good job of recontextualizing a lot of these characters. So while they do have these vast histories, I think what Secret Wars did was it took all of those people out of their context, shook off all of their storylines, and was like, this is who this person is, and they're going to play this part in my story, if that makes sense. Like, you don't need to know the ins and out of Namor and Black Panther's relationship and how Atlantis and Wakanda are consistently at war and they see each other's as like opposite monarchic rulers of the world, basically. Like, that adds nuance. That's fun. But at the end of the day, you need to know, like, Kitty Boy, Fish Boy, they go and fight the bad guys, you know? And Jonathan Hickman gives you that and lets it play out. And I also think this story does... This is a very Hickman thing to do, in all honesty. He starts with this big jumbled mess that you get frustrated at almost, and you're like, I want to know what's going on. And the more of him you read, the more you're just like, all right, then I'm just going to have to read it, because he will explain it. A lot of other writers, you're like, will they ever get to this? Is this something that's going to like bother me the whole way through? But Jonathan Hickman always unravels his strings. He's got that big whiteboard with the 15,000 red strings behind him. And he doesn't leave anything on the chopping block. Like, he will explain why Doctor Strange is sitting there with Doctor Doom. He will explain what's going on with these capsules of heroes that made it through into Battleworld, you know?
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that with Secret Wars, that I felt by the end of it, you got to see what Battleworld was like, but also the entire story had wrapped itself up, and you could move forward with a clean slate without too many questions.
Yeah. JP, I have a question for you. So this is weird to me because usually you like superhero comics more. How do you I want a preliminary report on how you feel about this one.
This is interesting because, not gonna lie, this is one I had a harder time connecting to. Something that I loved about all the other superhero comics is that I felt like I could connect with the characters, with the superheroes. But on this one, I feel like the scope of it was just so big that it was hard to be relatable with. And so
it does feel like storytelling acrobatics are constantly going on. I will give you that.
Yeah, and so like I still like superheroes and stuff, but I don't know. This part of I feel like this part of being a superhero is just, I don't know, almost too vast and less personal for me, that I wasn't able to relate to it as much and enjoy it as much. Because I think that's one of the things that makes me enjoy those superhero comics so much, is that I relate to them, I feel inspired by them, and I feel like I can, like, it's something that kind of changes the way I want to be. But this one, I'm like, I don't know, I'll just try to, I don't know, not destroy all the multiverse, I guess. I don't know how to apply that in my life.
And that makes sense to me. And so for me, it's like I said, this thing, storytelling acrobatics. There's so much going on and a lot of stuff happening. And I was really impressed at how well it ties it all in together. And I was able to focus down on like some of the main characters, which are Reed Richards and honestly Dr. Doom, almost more than Reed Richards, as he's trying to kind of hold this thing together. And while Dr. Doom creeps me out sometimes, like, you know, marrying your rival's wife when everything's put back together and changing her memories so she doesn't remember him, that's weird. It made me uncomfortable. Except that he doesn't T-pose. He's just like, what if I made the world tree into a throne and I sat on it? And
T-pose.
I guess. But I feel like it did a really good job of like saying, look, this villain actually did something good. He saved everybody. And we actually, without him, would have just been destroyed and there would have been nothing left. And then you have all these heroes who stand up to him in spite of that.
I do think this is the Doctor Doom story, and I think that's why I like it so much. Doctor Doom was introduced by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby very much as like basically scary Dracula up in the tower. It was like, wahaha, I'm so scary. But that's not what he is anymore. We've had 70 years of storytelling at this point that has come in and been like, no, Doctor Doom is primarily interested in his rivalry with Reed Richards. he sees Reed Richards as his antithesis, because Reed comes from like a place of privilege. He comes from the United States. He comes from a lot of backing, a lot of like, he is respected in the science community. Dr. Doom was born in Romania, and there have been a number of stories that have dealt with that have dealt with like the racism that he's faced being Romani, you know, being an outcast. He has his facial scarring that really embarrasses him. And here in Secret Wars, we see a pretty drastic facial scarring that explains the metal mask. But other times it's been like a really simple scratch that like he just can't deal with the imperfections because he feels like he's already been dealt such a low lot in life. And what I have found most interesting about Dr. Doom over the years has been his relationship with Latveria, the country that he runs. Basically, they invented this Eastern European country that's like, I mean, it's honestly like Munich, but basically Dr. Doom's like, I'm king and despot of all of this country, but the country's really well off. Like, everybody, there's universal health care. There is water for everybody. Like, he takes care of the people, like he rules with an iron fist. There's never going to be an election. There's never going to be anyone else that rules but Dr. Doom. But he does a good job. And so it's like this moral quandary for the Avengers where they're like, he's a dictator. We should stop him. But the people in Latveria are like, we like him. He takes good care of us. And so like, I feel like Secret Wars is that blown up to the 10th degree. You know, it's like Dr. Doom took over the world. Dr. Doom is a bad person. But he's doing a good job. He kept everybody safe. He maintains peace. And so you just have to ask yourself, like, is Reed Richards just a dick? Like, if all of this is going well and Reed Richards just like, I don't like my enemies, the reason it went well. Like, who's the bad guy here? Is it Dr. Doom for saving the world? Or is it Reed Richards for just wanting to unravel the world and put it back together where he's on top and Doom's on bottom?
And I feel like it's a good question, and I feel like when they actually have their confrontation at the end, they kind of talk about that, where Dr. Doom's like, why are you doing this? And Reed Richards is like, it's because it could be better. And Dr. Doom says something along the lines of, you keep abandoning good, searching for perfect, and I just try and do the best with what I have, and that's never good enough for you. And it's a really fun moment, and I feel like that was kind of like the emotional climax of the story, was those two confronting each other. But I want to hear your thoughts. JP is the one who did not connect with this.
This is so bizarre having tea on myself. I don't know how.
Dr. Doom was a bit more relatable in that aspect. Like, you can tell that, like, yeah, he was doing his best and he was trying to, you know, create a world where people can be happy. He did so with an iron fist, and you could tell, like, early on, some other people, they weren't super like keen on being ruled by Dr. Doom, but him being omnipotent, they couldn't really do anything about it. And so yeah, I give him credit for trying, but I don't know, I also don't connect much with the ruling over others kind of thing. And so
I'm just ashamed that JP hasn't taken this as a guide for when he meets and kills God, you know? Like, that's what's relatable here is when the universe starts collapsing in around you, and I mean, whatever the opposite of entropy is, it all just collapses. You, JP, will have to go manga style, JRPG style, and slay your deity. Take on
How to Be God guide.
Exactly. I just think it's disappointing that you've chosen not to relate to that in a significant way, when in reality that's what we all need to do.
Well, and I do think that does bring up this interesting question. And this is kind of what happens with Stephen Strange, is once everybody else shows up and he kind of realizes they can stand up to Dr. Doom, Dr. Doom comes to like just take everybody out to keep his world order. And Stephen Strange is like, I'm noping all these people out of here. And he just like sends them all over the planet. And Dr. Doom is really upset about that. And he's like, why did you betray me? And Stephen Strange is like, you did really well, but you're trying to grasp onto this too tightly and you're going to ruin it, and you have to be willing to be a gentle ruler too. And so it's kind of this interesting question of like, Dr. Doom is not the best leader, but he's also the one that was willing to do what it took to save things. And I think is a really interesting moral quandary about like, is this a villain or is this a hero?
See, that's the funny thing. Maybe that's the one I related to the most, Doctor Strange, and then he died really early, so that's why maybe I had a hard time with the rest of it.
JP's like, they murdered my stand-in, ergo me. I'm dead.
And me and T with God complexes are like, yes. Continue the story. JP's like, I was just here for a good time. Doctor Strange was like, I'm just here to see us all saved.
Like Ed Stark dying in Game of Thrones. I was like, what the heck?
Oh, there's a...
You brought that up 2 years later, that you still are not over the fact that Neddard died at the end of one season.
Poor Neddard.
Wait, Eddard.
I know it's Eddard, but I wanted to say Neddard too. I want to get back to that original question that T asked. So, like, how did Secret Wars keep large scope and big scales without changing anything significantly? Like, what do you feel like helped this storyline accomplish that? And this might be a question more for T, but do you remember in Invincible when he went through that portal into, like, the reboot universe?
Yeah.
I don't remember you, but, like, that was so frustrating to me, where I was like, really? We've got so much going on, and this is what we're going to do for the next couple issues? Did you feel that way at all?
I just had, like, no idea what was there, and then they, like, left and, like, there'll be consequences, but then there never were.
Yeah, and so I feel like Secret Wars should feel that way a little bit, because, like, you had the Marvel Universe, you hop over into this weird little alternate world to have this big crazy story, and then you hop back out, and nothing really changed. But, like, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like there's conclusion. It feels like the story came to a good climax based around what we were given, and I want to explore why that is.
I think part of it is that we kind of have an expectation that comic books aren't going to change. You know? Nobody stayed dead. Like, some new people are introduced, but pretty much no matter what, Peter Parker's still back in New York, just fighting crime on the streets and being your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and nothing changes that. So we already kind of have that as a basis, you know? And so they have these really large things happen, and you know it's going to resolve. Just because, I mean, this is, you know, it's a kid's story, basically, about superheroes, and it always turns out well. But they do a good job of making you understand, like, there are stakes, because there are people that can be gone. Like, we don't care about killing a whole bunch of the Ultimate Universe. They did, and so they did create some stakes by killing certain things and then leaving others intact.
So after this, Dallas, just a question: does Doctor Strange come back?
Yes, he comes back.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Yeah, so basically, like, the end result of this is that the Ultimate Universe is erased except for the Maker and Miles Morales come over, because they were pretty much the only dynamic characters left from that universe, and they just get swooped on into the regular Marvel Universe with everybody else.
Yeah, and they do kill a number of people in this series. So Stephen Strange gets totally killed.
Ben Grimm.
Thanos gets totally killed.
That was awesome.
Just
Let JP tell about the Thanos fight.
It was kind of crazy because Thanos was talking some mad crap, like, you know, I don't need Infinity Gauntlet, I'm more than enough for you. And then he goes and gets Mortal Kombat, like, his spine ripped out of him. It was something.
And I also love how it's a comic, so there's just like no blood or anything. It just like shows him grab Thanos, then it shows him with a spine. And it's just like, yeah, we're just gonna let the kiddos use their imaginations for that bit because we aren't putting it in here.
I loved that little interaction because Thanos comes in, he was like, I played God too, way back in Infinity Gauntlet. I got all the stones together, I snapped away half the universe, I was God, dude, and I didn't win, and I'm way cooler than you, so I don't know what you think's gonna make you win. Dr. Doom was like, idiot, I was Stan Lee's favorite villain, I'm the first big villain, yeet. And basically, it was like, Stan Lee is greater sign than Jim Starlin, and that's what that means.
I love how you pull these historical inferences out, but I know it's great. And so Thanos dies, Stephen Strange dies, the Maker dies, so I'm surprised he's back. Like, he gets, do we say pizza-fied? Well, no, because the Molecule Man kills him, and he talks about pizza as he's doing it because he's a big foodie apparently, and just like chops him up into another Mortal Kombat style, just like cross sections. So he dies. What's Ben's last name?
Grimm, baby.
Ben Grimm dies. Like, a lot of people die.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people die. But you kind of know that they're going to put everything back together. But then they do let a couple things happen that have big stakes. And it's surprising how they did that, so it's not just like everything's perfect just with Miles Morales. I feel like one of the big things is Reed Richards and Dr. Doom fight, and they're arguing about their philosophies, and then they agree on something, and Molecule Man's like, sweet, now time to restart the universe, and they're all both like, wait, what? And then they reset it. One of the last shots is you do see Dr. Doom, but his face is fine. And it's kind of this weird moment where it's kind of like he wasn't punished for everything he did, and in all honesty, he was kind of a good guy, and they let him have that, and he got rewarded for that. And that was kind of a big deal, and it felt really nice. I liked it.
Yeah, in all honesty, this story is the perfect finale to the Marvel Universe, because it all started with Stan Lee deciding... Do you guys know the story of how Stan Lee started Marvel Comics?
No.
With Jack Kirby? All right, so Jack Kirby was probably the greatest comic book artist of all time. I don't feel like that's hyperbole. I genuinely believe that statement. And so Stan Lee comes to him and is like, hey, I've been writing a whole lot of Western comics for about 20 years, and I'm going to jump off a bridge if I have to keep doing that. And not literally, but like he was ready to quit comics. He's like, but my wife said, you know what, Stan? You hate writing these Westerns. What if you wrote a comic exactly how you wanted to? And what's the worst thing that happened? They fire you? You wanted to quit anyway. And so he's like, honey, you're a genius. And so he goes and gets Jack Kirby, and he's like, we're going to tell a story about a family that has like really complicated dynamics, and they're really dynamic characters. We're going to send them into space, and they're going to get like sci-fi crazy powers. We're going to call them the Fantastic Four. And Jack Kirby's like, you son of a bee, I'm in. And so they go and they do that, and they have this really fun dynamic where Stan would be like, I want this to happen. And he'd basically give Jack a paragraph, and Jack Kirby would go and create an entire comic out of that paragraph. Then he'd hand it back to Stan, and he's like, all right, put in the dialogue for this. And so you got to see these characters got fleshed out by Stan and Jack into this really dynamic, interesting family. And it's Fantastic Four issue 5 that Dr. Doom comes around, and he very quickly becomes the nemesis of the Fantastic Four. And if you look at the comic Secret Wars, most of the major characters were introduced in Fantastic Four. Black Panther is from Fantastic Four like 45. I think Galactus is from Fantastic Four. Obviously, Doctor Doom is from Fantastic Four. Namor is from Fantastic Four. The Maker is an alternate universe Fantastic Four. And so like this whole story revolves around that first invention of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby that everything else hopped out of. And so the final pages of this event having Doctor Doom's face finally healed and like leaving him at peace. This big tragic character gets his redemption, and then the Fantastic Four go back out into space to explore like they did in the first issue of the entire Marvel universe. That was really, really special for me as a comic book reader. Like, I wish so badly this could have actually been the end of at least the Fantastic Four's storyline. Like, I get you want to keep telling Spider-Man stories, right? But like, let Reed, Sue, and their kids be off in the galaxy, creating universes with their son's crazy mutant powers and exploring those universes and being what they were always intended to be and be happy, and let Doctor Doom be happy. Like, don't Phantom of the Opera the poor guy, you know?
And it really is too bad because like you do want that, but you know this is comics and they're never going to let him go because it's an intellectual property that will make money. Which is a little bit sad, honestly, because, you know, Spider-Man will never get a rest and never gets to just be happy because we got to vicariously live through him and we need some challenges, you know?
Squeeze every dollar out of that poor guy.
Mm-hmm. Yep. How about you, JP? What are your thoughts on all this?
I don't know. I feel like I've shared most of my thoughts. Yeah, it's a good read. I think something that would have helped me enjoy this more was kind of like you were saying, have more background on all the characters and being able to connect with them better that way. But that's something I did really appreciate at the end was the Fantastic Four family being able to, like, I loved it when what's the kid's name again? Franklin. Yeah, he asked Reed whether they're still superheroes or not, and he's like, we're scientists now, and that's okay. And I think that could be like being a superhero just in a different way. Like, superhero is just a title or whatever. It's just finding your way to make a difference in the world. And making worlds makes a little bit of a difference. So I think they're doing a good job there. They don't have to be saving the day every day like they used to be.
Well, is there anything else we want to talk about, or should we move on to ratings?
Can we talk for a second about the art? I feel like Esad Ribic is S tier right there. If we've been reading a lot of manga lately, like the artwork coming out off of Esad Ribic's pen is next level in the story. At least I feel like the character, it's got like this cool mysticism to it that like lends itself well to the sort of fantasy elements of this feudal battle world. I don't know, what are your thoughts on the artwork?
I actually liked it, and I usually hate this kind of artwork where it's like trying to be fairly realistic and they've got all these shadings and like highlights, and you can tell they spent like way too much time working on their color gradients, and it looks like a little bit too real, and it's getting in the valley of uncanny. Well, I don't know what it is, but you can tell they aren't people, but they're too close. So usually that's how I feel.
Sound like my mom talking about monkeys. My mom hates monkeys because they're too close to people. Genuinely terrified of them. I'll be like, Mom, let's go to the monkeys, and she's like, they look too much like people, let's go to the tigers.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Especially 'cause your mom seems like the last person to do that. Yeah. But so usually that's my problem with kind of like the really big budget comics, and it kind of surprises me because people are like, this is the best thing, the highest selling thing on the market, and I'm like, thanks, I hate it. But this did a really good job, and I don't know what it is, but it really did a solid job of creating kind of like that realism, but keeping it still comic book-esque. So I really liked it.
Well, with the art, for the most part, it was fine. I wasn't like huge on it, but one thing I couldn't stand was Susan. I swear she doesn't have eyebrows in any of her things, and it was throwing me off so bad. I could not.
She doesn't have eyebrows.
Oh,
that bothered me so bad.
We talk about Valeria right there. Look at little Valeria. Oh.
So yeah, for the most part, the art was like, yeah, this is cool, but then I couldn't stand them.
Oh, you and T have switched.
Yeah, this is funny. This is a role reversal like you will only know if you've watched the last 20 episodes that we've done, where I'm like, yeah, superheroes, and JP's like, where are the eyebrows?
I really love Secret Wars. I don't know that I'd ever hand this to somebody ever again and be like, read this with no context, even though it's a great story. I feel like it meant a lot to me because these characters mean a lot to me, and they basically asked one of the best modern comic book writers to come in and tie a bow on the Marvel Universe, and I feel like he did that fantastically. Fantastic Four, fantastically. And
they were the bow.
Yeah, Mr. Fantastic is the bow. They get him and they stretch him out and tie him in a bow, like, there you go. And Dr. Doom's inside, like, let me out! I can be a bow too! And you're like, no, you're made of metal. You have an ugly face. You can't be the face of this universe, you're ugly. So I loved it. Yeah, it's Susan's eyebrows. I will rate this Susan's eyebrows out of 10.
So nothing out of 10?
Just it transcends everything else, They might be there, they might not be. The existential eyebrows. No, I'm gonna give this like an 8 probably. I really liked it.
Yeah, see, and I'd give it a 7. And I realize that that's colored a little bit by the fact that I probably didn't have the greatest expectations for this. I'm sorry, Dallas. But it did surpass my expectations. And I can see that, like, if I was big into the Marvel Universe, this would have been a big deal. And I really enjoyed it. So
I really didn't mean to switch roles with you, T. But
It's okay. You're a dynamic person.
yeah, I don't know. This is my personal rating. It would be a 5. I mean, like it's not horrible, but like I don't get.
Why did they growling at me?
I'm glad I read it. It was a good experience, but like, it's not something I would read it again after having the context of everything before that. But like reading it from where I'm at, like my experience was a 5.
Have we all agreed on something since Superman Up in the Sky? Or should we have just retired at that point?
No, I don't think we have agreed on anything since then. I don't know that we ever will, because what else is going to make us all universally love it?
We can find something we universally hate.
That's actually what I was about to say. Let's find some piece of crap comic
Dunk on it.
and just trash it page by page.
That's so mean. That is so mean. Somebody's like, you know what? Oh, we could read the original Secret Wars. I'd be perfectly fine dunking on that piece of shit.
Well, I mean, I feel like we could Mystery Science 3000 it, and that'd be pretty great. I'm saying, he's thinking this could be fun.
That could be fun. For all you 10 people that listen, let us know if that's something you want. I could pull out some doozies for us to go through.
Anything else? I think that's all from me as well, JP.
Yep,
Any last words?
Have a great time, and I don't
Read Secret Wars.
Release the eyebrow cut. Anyway, then we will talk to you all next week. This has been DTR Comics Podcast.
See ya.